This is Women Road Warriors with Shelley Johnson and Kathy Tuccaro. From the corporate office to the cab of a truck, they're here to inspire and empower women in all professions. So gear down, sit back, and enjoy.
You're listening to Women Road Warriors. We're a show designed to empower and inspire women in trucking, in the trades, and everywhere. We cover all kinds of topics, even the tough ones. I'm Shelley, and
I'm Kathy.
Sometimes life takes turns in the road that are hard to handle. Setbacks can be tough, and it can be hard to recover from them. Today, we have a humor and business expert and comedian, Jan McInnis. She teaches people how to handle, recover, and avoid missteps in the future. Her keynote speech to audiences is Bouncing Back, Handling Setbacks with Humor and Resiliency. It's based on her book, Convention Comedian, Stories and Wisdom from 2 decades of chicken dinners and comedy clubs. I bet there are a ton of great stories in there. We're looking forward to her insight and her wisdom on how to handle life's curveballs. Welcome, Jan. Thank you so much for being on the show with us.
Hi, you guys. Thanks so much for having me.
Welcome.
This is
and you talk about road warriors, truckers, but man, comedians do a lot of driving too. So I'm there with you.
I bet you've traveled some miles.
Yes, not as much as you guys, but a good amount. Yeah, for sure.
You've got quite the background, and you're a warrior too, a woman warrior. Being a comedian, there are not a lot of female comedians.
No, there's more now than there was, but I started, 27 years ago before all the cool stuff like XM radio and things like that on the road. So I was, traveling around with my little cassette deck and driving 50,000 miles a year, hitting comedy clubs when I started out.
That's got to be exhausting.
Do you think the millennials even know what a cassette deck is? Just saying.
Sadly, my car that I have now, I don't drive that much anymore, and it still has one in it.
What?
Yeah.
I'm
great.
shocked.
Cassette. Oh gosh. Yeah.
Whoa.
I traveled to all the comedy clubs and felt like I always used to see the truckers and think, the only difference is we get to the hotel. Comedians have to go on stage then. The truck drivers get to hang out in the room. We drove a lot, man. I drove a lot. So.
Wow.
Hit every state but Alaska.
How do you do that? How do you prep for comedy? And how did you get into comedy?
Oh, I started, I always wanted to be a comedian. I think I was about 10 years old, I told my parents when I turned 16, I lived in Virginia. I grew up in the DC area. And I said, when I turn 16, I'm going to buy a motorcycle, ride cross country to Los Angeles, and become a comedian.
You go, girl.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, my parents didn't quite agree with that one, so I didn't. I went on to graduated from high school, went to Virginia Tech, and I remember the night, graduation night, we had the nice dinner at a restaurant, and I was looking around at my parents, and I was thinking, now is not the time to tell them I want to be a comedian. They put a little money into this. So I went into marketing for about 10 or 12 years and just always had that nagging thing. You have that thing you just want to do. And tried a couple, got up at an open mic finally, got the nerve up and had a great show and was hired and started that night. And I could feel
Wow.
I had this epiphany. I could feel life changing that night. And I thought, this is what I'm going to do. So I kept my day job for a couple more years while I worked comedy clubs at night, driving up and down the East Coast mostly. And that was tough. It got to, I remember driving by my office at 3 a.m. thinking, I got to go to bed and be there in 5 hours. So,
Oh boy. Yeah.
yes, I did that for a couple years. And finally, I just thought it's go time. I either have to, let go of comedy because I just can't keep this pace up, or I have to try it full time. And so I jumped in, and here I am 25 years later.
Bravo to you. Were you scared in the beginning?
I have to say, people always wonder, how did you walk away from benefits and job? And I think I was so excited about what I was going to, I wasn't paying attention to what I was leaving. And that is what I think you have to be with whatever you get involved with. Don't think so much about what you're leaving and all the things that are great there. Get excited about where you're going. I mean, I remember my last day in the office, I left the office was so excited. I ran a stop sign, got a ticket.
Ooh.
Because I was just thinking, I'm a comedian, yay! Then I realized I just got like $100 ticket and my income had just dropped drastically.
Yeah, that hurts.
So
You know
yeah.
what? You're right about that, because I mean, even myself, I just moved, I left everything I own to come here to Malibu, to California, to kind of work on my screenplay and work on my writing and bring my whole career to a whole new level. But if you want change, you literally have to be willing to detach yourself from everything and just follow your heart, follow your dream. You
Right.
have
Yeah.
to, because otherwise, if you're going to sit there thinking, oh, what if this, what if that? Oh, if you think of all the bad, negative possibilities that are out there, you'll never do anything. You'll
Right.
never move,
You're
right?
right. And
So
and
I left everything 2 weeks ago, and I just
really,
brought 3 suitcases. I'm staying at my friend's house. Like, I'm 52, right? I
woo!
should be in the comfort of my own home that I bought, but I'm like, no, life is too short. I'm going to do something drastic and just
Yeah.
follow my instinct, follow my gut, my dreams, and here I am.
Good for you, because too many people, and I'm not telling people to quit their job and go off and do, if you
Oh
got to
yeah,
be excited about, you got to be so
yeah,
excited and not think about it. I
yeah.
remember there was a woman that started the open mics and comedy with me back in DC, and we got together every Monday to write, and we'd always talk about how we're quitting our day jobs and we're going to go forward and do this and blah blah
Mm.
blah. Well, after a couple years, she kind of faded away, and I did all these hard bar gigs and all this stuff that's really um, soul crushing. It was very hard. But she kind of faded out of the comedy scene and moved away. And years later, I ran into her in another state where she was living, and we went out for drinks. And after a couple drinks, I said, why did you quit comedy? I said, you had the same start I did. You were getting booked for some gigs. We were talking about leaving your job, and without missing a beat, she said, because I saw what happened to you.
Oh
She
my
saw the
God.
hard jobs. She saw the hard bar gigs and the things I was doing. And I said, yeah, but they're behind me now. Now it's fun. I'm doing
Yeah.
corporate stuff and I'm doing keynotes, and that is over. But she couldn't stop looking at the hard stuff and what might happen to her. And there's so many people on like that on the
Oh,
fence
yeah.
that sit there and go, well, I want to do this, but they can't let go of what they
Hmm.
have.
They put obstacles in the way, don't they?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
And it's all in your brain. If you throw it all, you don't know where this path is going to lead. I didn't even know what the word keynote speaker was when I
Hmm.
started comedy. I mean, and my path is taken, and I didn't know I would be good at writing, but I ended up getting writing freelance for like the Tonight Show monologues and selling
That's
jokes.
cool.
My path has been
Nice.
so fun and weird, and you just have to be open to. I think not having a tunnel vision either. Kathy, if you look at,
Yeah.
you may say this, I'm going to get this play done or this whatever it is, but look your eyes out to what other things could possibly happen that might, oh, this might be kind of interesting. Oh, the corporate stuff, I didn't know about that until right before I was leaving my day job, and we had an event, and I hired the Capitol Steps, which are a singing fun comedy
Yes.
troupe in
Yeah.
DC. I hired them for this event, and I watched them at this event, this corporate event, and I was doing comedy clubs, and I thought to myself, wow, there might be a market. And I was telling comedians, well, I think there's a market for like, corporate entertainment. And they were like, no, 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 there's just Christmas parties. And I kept saying, no, no, I think there's more. And I didn't know there was no big internet. We had, dial up AOL back then. There wasn't a lot of that out there.
Sure.
But I just kind of had in my head, there's something else out there. So be open to what it might not fit exactly what you first thought of when you left, your day job or whatever, but be open to what might happen and jump on it.
So, how did you learn to be funny every day? I mean, that's got to be tough. I mean, 'cause, like, sometimes you got a bad day and you're like, I just don't feel like telling a joke.
Yeah, one thing comedians we've all talked about on stage, when you get on stage, it kind of everything goes away. You can be sick. You could be I've gotten on stage not feeling well, and right after run up to the bathroom to throw up. I mean, literally, because
Mm.
you're in this zone where you're having fun. And
Sure.
I don't look at it as I have to be funny. I can't, if I get on stage in a comedy club, I can't make you laugh. If you're in a bad mood or you're angry or something, I can. you got to be in the right frame of mind to accept the humor.
Sure.
But I don't know. I don't wake up and tell jokes to everyone. That would be, those people are annoying. That are always on, aren't they annoying?
Oh, yeah. The ever ready rabbit. Ah!
Yeah. In fact, I've had friends go, "Wow, you aren't always on, and but you're fun to be around and everything, but you don't sit there and go, I'm a comedian and I got to prove it every single day." No, I don't feel like it's something I have to be on for all the time.
You chose a field that was predominantly male.
Hmm.
The women in driving, I think it's up to 10% now in the trucking industry, women drivers. They deal with a lot of men.
Hmm.
Was that intimidating? Did you have to prove yourself? It's like, yes, I'm a woman, but hear me roar, babe. I'm out here.
You know what? And again, we're talking, 25 years ago. So yeah, there were very few women. In fact, very few comedy clubs would put two women together on a show because it would be called a women's show, and it might turn off anyone, guys that want to come out. But I had a nice compliment once. The Comedy Castle in Detroit, Royal Oak, Michigan. Mark Ridley, great guy, and he put me on. I don't know if you've heard of the comedian Kathleen Madigan.
Yep.
Very famous. She and I worked together there, and I remember seeing that we're both on the bill together. And I thought for weeks he's gonna cancel me. I know he is because he's gonna realize his mistake. He's put two women. It happens all the time. We got there. We had a great shows, and afterwards I said, "Mark, thank you for not canceling me." And he said, "You and Kathleen are great comedians. You're not doing these womeny things where you're gonna bash guys." And he goes, "It was a good show. I don't, it wasn't a women's per se show where you're just gonna talk about your period and all that." He said, "You're good comedians." So that was very encouraging. I sure it was a lot of guys. I mean, I have to say I didn't have a whole lot of problems with them. There were a few that sure if I could maybe be sitting around from the millions in the lawsuit drinking a Mai Tai on a beach somewhere if I had pursued going after some people. But for the most part, I didn't have a lot of problems. And the guys that were jerks to me were jerks to other guys, the guy comedians. So I could say, "Hey, so and so is a jerk," and he'd say, "Oh yeah, he is." So they weren't being jerks just because I was a woman. But what I did get, aside from the two women on the show, uh, was if I have a bad show, it's like I'm having a bad show for every woman comic out there. Everyone then turns, I knew women were terrible. I've walked up to on a couple occasions, and one time in particular, I walked up and people were standing around the outside looking at the pictures, and one of the people goes, "Oh, great! It's a women comedian tonight. It's gonna be awful
Hmm.
because they think we're really dirty and stuff." And I was right behind her. I said, "Hey, we're not that bad." And she turned around and was, like really embarrassed. And I had a phenomenal show, and I can't see anything from the stage, but I knew where she was sitting. So every time I had the joke hit, I'd look in her direction.
Good for you.
I couldn't see her, but I just embarrassed her. But I've had that, and I had a group come up to me once afterwards and say we have to apologize because it was a different group, and they said when we heard a woman on the show tonight, we all looked at each other and said this is going to suck, and you were great. So it was very nice because I didn't know they. But there's kind of a stigma, women are maybe dirtier, they're not as funny, they're going to all talk
Yeah.
about their period or their whatever, and there's that stigma that you have to kind of get over. And
Sure.
if
You know,
if you're funny, you're funny. And I think when you hear my act after 30 seconds, you're like, okay, she's not gonna go there and bash people and whatnot.
Right.
I think there's a stigma in all the many, many career paths, even in heavy equipment operating. A lot of men think, oh my God, a woman, here she is in, come in a man's world operating equipment. She won't know what the heck she's doing. Stay in the kitchen and,
Yeah.
stuff like that. But I tell you right now that it is a known fact that women are better drivers and operators than men. and
We can
it's true.
multitask, baby.
Well, yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
We're genetically engineered to do that.
we rock. Come on, right?
Yeah.
Well, what's interesting? I don't know if this is in the trucking industry. I had more issues with women bookers and women club owners. Now, with that said, there are some great ones out there that I've worked with, and So I don't want to make this a blanket statement, but there are far fewer women club owners and or bookers, and I had a higher percentage of a problem with some of them, as far as not booking me, not giving me, moving me up to feature and headline, that sort of stuff, than I ever had with the guys. The guys were just pretty straightforward. You want a headline? Here's what you need to do. Women were more like, well, I'll decide when you headline, things like that, and just
Mhm.
weird stuff. I had a woman booker once say to me, I was working. It was a 2-person show, and I was working with this guy. He was a magician or something like that. And she said, well, it was a bar gig type of thing. She said, don't put your drink down around him, if you know what I mean. I'm like, really? You're booking this guy? And I got to watch my drink. He's going to slip something? I mean, that was the craziness. And you're like, you're a woman. Why would you do this? So I
Exactly.
had
Yeah.
that sort of stuff a little bit to deal with. But again, overall, not bad at all. Not as, not tons of incidences.
I think sometimes women don't always play well with each other.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know if it's because until recent years they weren't involved with team sports as much. I don't know. There seems to be this rivalry, and we're working against each other. It's kind of like, come on, people.
I agree, or sometimes maybe it's also in the business world. I had that a little bit, and I feel like it was women going, "Well, I got here by myself. You get here by yourself," And guys have more of at least back when I was in the business world, more of a good old boys network that can help each other.
Right.
But I think overall, a good experience. The comics were great for the most part, and the club owners were good to me, and I was able to prove myself. I like I said, I have a little pressure, feeling like if I have a bad show, I have a bad show for every woman out there. But once you do well too, you get a lot of respect, and people are like, okay, she's good, she's funny. We'll leave her alone and book her more.
Sure. Absolutely.
Stay tuned for more of Women Road Warriors coming up.
Industry movement Trucking Moves America Forward is telling the story of the industry. Our safety champions, the women of trucking, independent contractors, the next generation of truckers, and more. Help us promote the best of our industry. Share your story and what you love about trucking. Share images of a moment you're proud of. And join us on social media. Learn more at truckingmovesamerica.com.
Welcome back to Women Road Warriors with Shelley Johnson and Kathy Tuccaro.
That had to have been a thrill when you finally got to the level where The Tonight Show used some of your material. How cool is that?
I got to sell, way back when. Okay, this is how old it is. Leno had a fax machine, and you could fax in material, and I was writing. I've also written for a lot of radio stations. I used to write for a radio prep service for years. I'd wrote 15 jokes for hundreds of stations, and it would be fun because you'd be driving around the country and you hear a DJ doing one of my jokes.
Oh, yeah.
Or a friend of mine called me out here in LA a few years ago, and she's like, I heard the funniest top 10 list on the radio. And I said, you want me to read it to you? It's on my computer. That was fun. And so but years ago, Leno had this fax machine, and you could get the fax, call in, get to his assistant, get the fax number if you're a comedian, and send in jokes. And so I would do that. And then I was on the road for like 2 or 3 months, because when you work in roads, you got to go out for months. I don't know what it is with trucking, but you got to go out for a couple months to make good money. And I came back in, and I was tired, and it was late, and I only had a week off the road, and I grabbed my mail, opened it up, and there was my check from the Tonight Show for my first joke I sold. It was
That had to be
it was fun.
cloud
Yeah.
nine, I bet, huh?
It was great. Yeah, and you call his assistant and say, hey, what joke number 718 or whatever, and they tell you, oh, that was the Super Bowl joke or whatever. So I was like, oh, I got it, got something. So
Nice.
That's so very cool. So you talk about bouncing back and handling setbacks with humor and resiliency. How do we do that? I mean, it's like, wow.
Well, you know what? comedians are perfect to talk about this issue because that's kind of how we learn our job is by failing. I mean, there is no real people have courses and stuff, but really the only way you can learn our job is by getting on stage at an open mic night where the audience hasn't paid money and we're not getting paid. And then you can test out your jokes and your timing and your material and really see if you're any good at this. Other industries don't have an open mic night. They don't have an open truckers night, do they? Hey, jump up there in that big rig and drive the Colorado Rockies right now, and we'll see how you do.
It might go
No.
over though, because I imagine that there are a lot of drivers that love to tell jokes. They love to tell stories. Absolutely, yeah.
But no other business, not a lot of other industries. That's you learn your job by just doing it, and there's no other real training. So we bomb a lot, we fail a lot in the beginning, and you have to learn how to avoid it. You have to learn how to make sure it really is a failure because so many times we walk away kicking ourselves and it wasn't what it seemed. You really have to pay attention to that.
Yeah.
When I moved out to LA, I moved out and I moved into a 400 square foot studio apartment. It's the size of my laptop, I think. And and 3 places to sit as long as somebody had to go to the bathroom because it had a chair, a couch, and a toilet, I think, or a futon and a toilet. I looked like a big loser, right? But I did it because it was very cheap. It was only a few $100 a month, like $400 a month. And I knew when I moved to LA, I didn't want my rent to put me out of the business and I'd have to go waitress or something and make
Sure.
money. I wanted to stay in the business. So I looked like a big loser, but I knew I wasn't. So sometimes we get kind of conned into it and people think, you're people kind of make you feel like you're a loser
Yeah.
and you're really not, like you've made a mistake. We used to hang out at the LA Improv on Melrose, and one night they have these everyone was getting a deal, and what that is a development deal where like CBS or NBC looks at you and says, hey, we like you, we don't know what to do with you, it could be 20,000, it could be 100,000 bucks. Here's a development deal. That means you're going to stay in town, you got money to stay in town, you don't have to go on the road, and we're going to find something for you, sitcom or some kind of show for you. So everyone that night at the Improv was getting a development deal. And people were like, "Oh, I'm going to CBS, NBC." I got nothing. My deal was at CVS, 15% off, I think. And so I'm really depressed. I'm really depressed. So about 11:20 or so, I leave and I'm driving home, walk into my 400 square foot studio apartment. And I flip on the TV and Leno's doing one of my jokes. And I'm like, I got something too.
Wow.
But we forget what we have and we start to let other people make us feel bad. So you have to make sure it really is a mistake, a real failure before you start kicking yourself.
And what
I
a
think
wonderful thing! As soon as you turned on the TV, there was one of your jokes. It was
One
like
of my jokes
the
that I wrote.
universe
And I'm like,
telling you, "Hey, you're headed in the right direction."
yeah, it's just not as obvious. You're not going to get this $100,000 development deal, So you really have to ask some questions. Did it help you move towards your goals? What does it feel like to you? Do you feel like you made a mistake? Review your experience, of course. Make sure that, in the past, is this how things worked out or not? And get some distance. Don't start kicking yourself when something goes wrong immediately. You got to put some time between it.
It's also understanding that failure is part of success, right?
Yep.
And if you don't believe in yourself, regardless of these little setbacks, you're going to crash and fail like big time. You have to, in my opinion, you can't listen to what other people say or their ideas of dreams and goals and how things should work. Only you know what's right for you. You have that inner guidance, that feeling that kind of overwhelms you and say, you know what, this is okay because what did I learn? What can I do better? What,
Yes.
You try and change the course of thought, your thought patterns. And I think that's really one of the bottom lines of success is believing in yourself.
Yes. And your thought patterns, that's a great point you make, because you have to change your subconscious thought. You have to stop focusing on what went wrong. You have to start looking at what has gone right in similar instances. I mentioned the bar gigs, they're called one-nighters, sounds bad, but it's actually a bar gig, where you go in and you do comedy. Well, the problem with these one-nighters when I started was, the comedy club would be like a Tuesday through Sunday night. So Monday night, the bar owner in the local town would invite the comics over. We pick up a little extra cash, and the bar patrons get some comedy. The problem is they didn't know how to advertise them. So people that show up at the bar actually looking for a one nighter get comedy instead, right? And so they might have a post-it note on the wall or something, and so you go into the bar to do comedy. And also, what else happens on Monday night? Monday Night Football, right? So they
Right.
turn off the game and they'd send you up. And it was awful. They were horrible. Most people in the bar, I was clean. I'm a clean comic. A lot of people were drunk. I have nothing against drinking. I love a couple beers, but they didn't go to the bar for comedy. So for me, they were awful, and I had really bad experiences. So every time I'd walk into a bar gig after a couple of years, I'd go, "Oh no, this is going to happen again." And I think I screwed up a lot of bar gigs that weren't going to be bad because I kept thinking back to the times it didn't work. And I had times in the bar gigs when it did work, but I never paid attention to that. So you got to focus on the times it worked and stop thinking about the times that you feel like it could have gone better,
Sure.
in order to move on. Otherwise, every time you go in that situation, you're going to think, oh gosh, it's going to happen again.
And you really are what you project too, right? Because
Yeah.
if you're already thinking like that, your whole energy, your whole vibration is in a downward spiral. People can feel that.
They
Right?
can
They
absolutely
draw
feel
on
it.
that.
Absolutely feel that you're not confident, that you don't want to be there. But other ways to move on as well. I mean, you do have to change your sort of your mindset, your subconscious mind, and thinking, and think of the times it went well, and really repeat that and think of a lot. Jay Leno never talks about it. Never watches a video of a show that didn't go well. He said, "Why would I watch that? That's not what I want to do." But I do say you have to acknowledge it. If it didn't go well, your subconscious knows it didn't go well, but acknowledge it only to analyze it and learn from it, not to beat yourself up. Uh,
Yeah.
Acknowledge, okay, and sometimes you think, I'm going to just bury this. I did a show one time. It was a week-long show. The club owner was there for the first night, which rocked, went really well. Every show after that was horrible for me. I just didn't connect. The audiences just weren't. It just wasn't my crowd. In fact, the Friday night, the first show went so bad, I went and changed my shirt because I thought I'd get a little better energy for the second show. Yeah, it turns out it wasn't the shirt's fault. It was it was it just wasn't a good mix. Well, the club owner comes back in town for the Sunday night show, and I rocked again. So the only shows she saw were good. So we're
Yes.
back there, and she's paying me, and she said, "Well, how'd the week go?" And my first thought was, "Well, she doesn't know they went bad. I'll just." And then I thought, "Nah, I gotta tell her." So I said, Lisa," I said, "I just don't do well in your room. I don't know if it's the crowd or whatever, but I just don't do well." And she looked at me without missing a beat, and she goes, "I know, Jan, you don't, but I love your material. I love your act, and I will continue to book you." Do you think I felt
Wow.
like $1,000,000?
Yeah.
Because if I had lied and walked out of there, she's going to get the comment card. She's going to know it didn't go well.
Yeah.
But you feel better when you acknowledge it because you're
Mhm.
not hiding anything if you don't
Yeah.
acknowledge it. But
Sure.
don't beat yourself up. You might get a
Yeah.
nice surprise like that, but you also get a chance to, okay, that didn't, what else? Pick three things. Richard Simmons, the exercise guru that used to do all the
Yeah.
Oh
exercising and stuff on
yeah.
TV.
Sure.
He said every day pick three things that went right, three things that went wrong, and that's it. And
Well,
think about those and let it go.
and
So you really have to.
you had to feel so good. She was being a champion for you. She
Mhm.
believed in your stuff.
She did. That's the way she wanted, because I was a very clean act, and that's the way she wanted her room to go. And so she knew it was a low learning curve. And she felt like if I was willing to handle it every week for a couple times a year, she would keep booking me. And just a great, great soul. I really liked her. So that was helpful.
It's part of training in a sense, whether you're training for a career or training for, like you say, like for what you do for a comedian or whatever. Once you, like for me example, I'm learned last year to operate the biggest greater in the world. Well, my trainer sees my mistakes. He sees me struggling, but he just he'll let me go until I figure it out, until I stop wobbling the wheels and I get it. I'm getting stronger and better. And then all of a sudden, oh my God, I'm one of the really good operators. Whereas before I got like 2 windrows going on. I got, I'm wobbling all over the road, trying to get blade control. Drivers are going by me, looking down at me, shaking their head, thinking, what the heck is she doing? Right. And I'm like, just give me a minute, right? I'll get this.
All of a sudden, you're driving a house.
Yeah, right. Hey.
Well, but you also that you've got someone to believe in you, and another good way to get through and kind of move on from mistakes and setbacks is to connect with a network. Comedians laugh about our bad shows. We never sit around and talk about the shows that went great. I don't talk about the time I was in front of 4,400 people. I talk about the time that I had a bad show in front of 30 people, and we have fun and we laugh about it. But we also makes us feel connecting with your network and making sure you have some people to talk to candidly. It lets you feel like, okay, I'm not the only one out here making mistakes. I'm not the only one out here bombing. I had one of my worst shows ever when I started out with my relatives in the crowd, which is not who you want in the crowd, right? And horrible, but they were my dad's cousins, and they had come with some friends, and I just did. I shouldn't have been featuring. But I wanted the money, and tried to stretch my 12 minutes of material into 30, and that doesn't work well. And it was such a bad experience. But I had my friend Rob that night in the hotel. I called and I was like, oh God, it was torture. And he said, would you get to go back tomorrow? I said, oh God, yeah, I have to do this again. And he said, good, you get another chance at it. And they had cut my time down to 20 and I did great. But you got to have a network. You got to have just a couple people that you can call and talk candidly and say, this is what happened. And, how do I get out of this? And chances are they've had the same experience,
A listening ear that understands rather than thinking you have aluminum foil on your head. What are you doing in this? Because you do run across naysayers and Debbie Downers, and it's like, you don't want to talk to people that say, hey, I can't. I want, yes, I can.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's huge.
And yeah, you need someone to pump you up. Like I said, when I started, there was dial-up AOL and no cell phone. Cell phone was the size of your truck, I think, Kathy. Remember those? They were huge.
Yeah, the big ones. You pull the antenna out, and you're like,
yeah. And they were like $8 a second, so you really couldn't talk unless 911. I'm stuck. Help! Click.
Right.
But I had a book that I would cut out like cartoons and little motivational quotes and things that I had and I could refer to. And I had my little book with me of all these different motivational things and things to pump me up that I would open up and read and go through when I was feeling down, just to kind of help me get my head back together. So something that helps you motivate you as well. Maybe it's some TED Talks, maybe it's something else, but to kind of get your head back in the game.
Or this show, people listening to this and getting inspired.
Yeah.
It's having a place to go so that you know that, yes, I have value. Yes, I can do this. And no, I'm not crazy. Because I think the world tends to pigeonhole and label people, and there's a lot of negativity.
Yeah, right. And realize that one mistake usually isn't your whole career. I've had some bad shows. And I'm 20 whatever 6-7 years in, I'm still here. I'm not famous, but that really wasn't my goal. My goal was to make a great living, and I'm probably the only comedian that doesn't like working nights and weekends. So and I do a lot of the keynotes now, so I'm on during the week, which is great.
Mm-hmm.
So figure out what your goal is with the whole thing. I mean, did it hurt you? Did it help you? Did it move you forward? But realize that it's just one piece. It's not everything. And there's so many people who give up after a few failures. I mean, so many people that give up, and they spend their life talking about what they would have liked to have done. Well, you can't quit after just a little bit of unsuccess. I saw a quote by Rosie O'Donnell years ago. It was in my book, and it said something like, comedians ask me, how to be a successful comedian. And I say, quit now, quit. And she said, because I say that because if I can make you quit and tell you how hard it is, then you're really not motivated to do it. Because you're
Yeah.
gonna have a lot of roadblocks. And if you're so easily swayed that someone can tell you to quit in one incident, you're not gonna do this.
That's right. I work for 13 hours a day or night, and for 14 days straight. That's my work
Mm.
rotation. And so we don't have a lot. I'm sitting in equipment, so we listen to the radio, of course, right? We have Sirius. And I listen to Howard Stern when I'm in the grader, because in the truck they don't give it. But anyway, what I really like I don't listen to most of his shows, but I listen to his interviews, and because he's such a good interviewer. And he interviews a lot of comics, of comedians like Jerry Seinfeld, Kevin Hart, and it doesn't matter how big they are, failure is a major part of their success. They
Right.
talk about it, how hard it is, and how they're, in the beginning, and how hard it was getting on stage and getting booed and or whatever, getting heckled. But they
Yeah.
still, like you say, they don't give up. They keep trying, and they know it's a big part of it, right?
Yeah, yeah, and there are people that in open mics when I started out, there were people that bombed all the time, and someone said maybe we should just tell them they're not any good, and I'm like, no, they can keep bombing if that's what they want to do, or maybe they'll find something in comedy they can work in. Maybe they won't be a comedian on stage, but they'll find their niche if they keep their eyes open and see what's out there, what else is, how else they could be involved in
Mhm.
the comedy world. If they're not going to make it on stage.
Or
So
flip that switch in perspective and try a different angle, right?
right, right, yeah, yeah.
Do you think part of it too is women don't always trust their own instincts?
Oh, good point. Good good point. I think it's getting better, but I think at least when I started, probably there's a you have to. I think you have to trust your own instincts and certainly listen to some of the noise, but there's an awful lot of people that want to tell you how to do your job that have never
Oh,
done your job.
no
You know,
kidding,
are
hey?
there
Yeah.
are there are a lot of people that want to tell you how. I have people come up, well, if you talk slower, if you do, you know what? I've been doing this for 27 years. I got it,
Uh-huh. Yeah. Right.
I got this.
Yeah, but even when you start out and you start to listen to it and I think you've got to kind of squelch the noise a little bit. Um, Interesting story. I worked when I did these bar gigs. I would have my butt handed to me a lot of times. But there's another guy I worked with who um, he'd rock. He'd just do really well in these bar gigs. And I'd walk away from the bar gigs going, that's not really what I want to do anyway. So I'm doing it for the money. I'm trying and very clear on what my goal was with the bar gigs. I needed the money. But this guy would just rock and he was great. Fast forward about 10 years later, and I'm in Vegas, working Vegas. I got my name up in lights on the strip. I was at the Excalibur Hotel. It was great. My picture was up, really fun. And I ran into this guy. He was out there just visiting. And he said, wow, he goes, I see your name and your picture and lights up there and on the Vegas strip. He goes, I swore when I started out I was never going to do any pot jokes. I now have 60 minutes of pot jokes. I can't get booked in Vegas. And because he wanted that immediate gratification in the bar gigs to do a bunch of beer and pot jokes and go for that audience, not really knowing what his goal was. His goal was to make them laugh, and so he molded his act to make them laugh in that moment. Whereas I said, no, my act, this is what I want to do with my act. And, I'll eventually move out of the bar gig. So,
Excellent. So you need to know where you're headed. Absolutely.
yes, know what the final goal is and make peace with what's happening right now. And the way I talk, you think I don't like bar. I really do like beer and wine and vodka, but it's not. But yeah, it was just an interesting experience. But it was interesting to run into someone who wasn't clear on his goal, and aside from he wanted to be the funniest person in the room, and I was clear on my goal. I was like, okay, I know I'm not going to be the funniest here in this situation, but that's okay because I don't want to stay in this situation. I want to move to different venues.
Sure.
I think sometimes people also, what stops them is that they focus on their past success and they don't feel that they can reach that level again. All they see is their greatest moment up to date. say, I'll give you just a random example. Say you speak in front of 5,000 people. Well, in the next few years after, you only speak to 1,000 or maybe 500. People always refer to their past highlights and focus on that rather than try and working with their current situation and trying to catapult themselves in a different way, in a different steps in trying to reach that
Right.
success isn't always what you did in the past, but success is a whole variety of things, right? What guides you to say that this is not a success whereas this was, right? It's all a
Right.
success. Yeah.
Right. And it's, I'm always amazed at the comedians who have huge success and they keep building on that, and then there's a lot of comedians who have one big success and that's it. And they keep pointing to that. You're right. You
Yeah.
can't kind of live in the past on those. You got to, if, you want to stay in the business, and you got to keep sort of changing and morphing and figuring out what your next path is. Keep it
Evolving.
exciting. Yeah.
Stay tuned for more of Women Road Warriors coming up.
Great leaders challenge their people not to stop at the first right answer. Tighten the Lug Nuts is the book that will help you move past that first right answer to be more effective, more productive, and more successful. This book serves as a blueprint that can be easily applied by leaders, entrepreneurs, truckers, owner-operators, all of us in our everyday lives. This is one of the best leadership books you can read to help you accelerate towards your personal and professional goals. Plus, a portion of the proceeds will be donated to truckerschristmasgroup.org. Visit tightenthelugnuts.com to order your copy today.
Welcome back to Women Road Warriors with Shelley Johnson and Kathy Tuccaro.
And maybe that's part of it. People don't always evolve, or they don't necessarily know who they want to be when they grow up, or they're afraid to be that person. It's like, I had these great ideas when I was 7, but I can't do that now. They talk themselves out of it.
And another thing for people looking to change careers who like you said earlier, you went to marketing and then you knew deep inside you wanted to be a comedian, and you finally did. It's not necessary. People stop themselves from, I'm too old to do this, or they hit a point. I've passed that niche market. I'll just stay in my comfort zone in this job that I hate. Well, when I was 42 and I couldn't go back to nursing, and like Shelley, you just said, what do I want to be when I grow up at 42? Well, I ended up going to career planning workshop to figure it out. And the next thing you know, she gives me a sheet. I had to be a heavy equipment operator. My aptitudes, I'm like, what? You're kidding me. I laughed so hard, I just about fell off my chair. I'm like, that's the most ridiculous career change I've ever heard of. I said, I'm 42. I'm a woman. I don't even like equipment. I said, I'm not mechanically inclined. I mean, and that's a man's job. I said, your test is wrong, right? So I push it back to her, and the woman gives me a look. She puts one hand on her hip, raises the eyebrow, and says, if only you believe in yourself a little bit, missy, you'd see that. Right. So I'm sitting there with my arms crossed thinking, I just wasted 3 days. And like, here I am, like, what a waste of time. So she puts on a Les Brown video of 10 minute video. It's possible. That's all it was. And so I went from sitting with my arms crossed to all of a sudden thinking, well, I'm a good driver. I used to race cars. I could drive a truck. And so all of a sudden I allowed myself to be open to the realm of possibilities. And that changed everything. The minute I opened up my consciousness. And so she sent me to Women Building Futures, a nonprofit where women actually get into the non-traditional trades. And because I allowed myself to be open, well, the day I walked in, ExxonMobil is standing there paying for 16 women to take this heavy equipment course of 12 weeks. Well, son of a gun, I got picked out of 170 women. I mean, okay, albeit you want me to do a backflip? Sure, I'll do a backflip. Whatever you want me to do, I'll do it. So the whole point is that I let myself be open to the possibility rather than shut myself up, regardless of the fear, the unknowns, what if I fail? Actually, there was never what if I fail. It was just, okay, you know what? I'm going to be open. I'm going to try this and we'll go with it.
You know what? There's that. It's great. You've had a lot of career changes. It's great though, because just because you're exploring something doesn't mean you have to do it, but don't shut it down right away. You could have gone to that and said, it really isn't for me. All you did was waste a couple of days. All right. but people are so easy to shut something down that's so different instead of going, well, what is this all about? Because most of us don't know what different careers and such are all about. We have what we think they are about, but we don't know. People, I want to be a comedian, but they don't realize that there's a lot of driving, there's a lot of waiting around, there's a lot. I spend more time marketing than I do writing jokes because it's more about your business skills than it is about being funny. There's a lot of funny comedians who have never ever gotten out of open mics because they don't want to do the other stuff, the other hard stuff.
Right.
It doesn't hurt to take a peek inside something else that sounds interesting. You never know, but don't just.
I was really surprised out of the 16 women that got picked to do this 12-week course. Most of them, except for one, I think a good 15 of them were all midlife change in career. One was she'd been a staff sergeant for the Edmonton Police Service for 25 years, and she retired at 55 and decided, you know what, I'm going to try something else. And here she was. We had a Red Seal chef. We had people from the military. We had a postal office worker. We had, and me. I was a nurse. You go from nursing to operating the biggest ship in the world. I mean, that's both ends of the spectrum here. Right?
Yeah.
You just never know. Yeah.
You got to be brave and courageous and feel the fear and do it anyway. That's my motto. Just do it. Yep. Shake in your boots, puke if you have to, but just do it.
Yeah.
Right. If you really want to do it, like. And there's going to be, and you got to do the stuff you don't want to do too, the scary stuff to get to the good stuff. I mean, the stuff that, or the day-to-day drudge that, I don't want to do this, but in order to get to the good stuff, and to get to the thing you really want to do.
And what's interesting, when we run across critics, it seems like the critics, they're their own worst enemies. They don't want necessarily other people to succeed.
Right.
So they want to, discourage. It's much easier to just kind of wallow. I think my mother used to use that phrase, wallow in the mud, get out there and do something,
Yeah. And what the critics too, I find, are the ones that have never done your job. They want to tell you how to do it.
Yeah.
I had somebody years ago write a really scathing book review on my book on writing humor. This person, and I didn't see the review for like a year because I don't look at that stuff, and so it didn't hurt me because I didn't know it was out there. But I looked at it, you've never written a joke in your life. How could you go and bash something? They're just trying to be mean. There's people out there trying to be mean.
Yeah.
For me, or they just don't want to see other people get ahead.
It's the green-eyed monster. They're jealous.
Yeah.
Because maybe secretly they'd like to do that.
Yep.
But they would never admit that, of course.
Right. Right.
Yeah, people, a lot of just from all the interviews that I listened to, not just on Stern, but on other things, because I love to see how people succeed. I want to know their story. I want to know all about how do they face their failures. Well, I'd say pretty much all of them, nobody reads the critics, the reviews, because they're all negative. Right. And if you start focusing on what other people say and, oh, you should have done this and, oh, you're terrible, get off the stage, or, you're horrible. What do you think you're doing? And it'll pull you down.
Oh, sure.
So, you gotta, if you want to stay out of negativity, you got to raise your vibrations, rise higher than that.
Yeah.
And
right.
Don't let it phase you, whatever, man. Right.
Yeah. Right. And I'm so tired of everyone has to review everything every day. And I want to get to a point where I don't want to see your reviews. I don't care. I don't care. I'm doing my thing. Did you like it? Yeah. Okay, good. Then, the audience loved it. Great.
Okay.
Right. Yeah.
I don't want to hear it. I don't want to hear what you have to say about it. Just
how do the millennials say this? Whatever.
Oh yeah. Whatever. Yeah.
But if you wait, all it's going to get is you're going to get older. That's it. So move on what you want to do now, because it doesn't get easier as you get older.
No.
It's really interesting how many people at a certain age, it's almost like they start packing it in. It's like, well, my life's, I'm looking at the nursing home. It's like, that's really, what a goal is that? Really? Seriously?
Oh my
that's
God.
30 years hence. Come on.
I know. Yeah, it is hard to.
Well, Jan, just know in your heart that whenever that day hits for you, you're going to have the whole nursing home in stitches, right?
There you go.
You're going to be the life of the party.
And I can do the same jokes over and over because the memory
That's right,
issues,
because they'll forget.
So every day it'll be a comedian show.
See? The bright side of things.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, Jan, we have a couple minutes left here. I want people to be able to find you, and maybe if you have a last couple thoughts of words of wisdom for women drivers, because I'm sure they would just love to pick your brain.
Well, I'd love to hear from you, people. You can find me at my website, theworklady.com. Nobody can spell McInnis, so Jan McInnis. So I came up with, I used to do a lot of office humor. So theworklady.com. One thing I've just so enjoyed, and send me an email, jan@theworklady.com. I'd love to hear from your listeners. One thing I've really enjoyed about my job doing this stuff, the keynotes and comedy for corporate, is I get to learn about all these different industries that I knew of, but I didn't know much about. And this trucking is cool. I mean, you guys, you have the scariest job on the planet. I was telling Shelly earlier, to me, you have a scary job. And I couldn't do it. So my hat's off to you. Driving all those miles and handling what you handle, and not losing your getting ready for road rage because you've got so many crazy, stupid drivers on the road. But use your time wisely. I'd say. I guess that would be my advice. The good thing about getting older and taking something up is we realize the value of the time we have and the free time we have.
Mhm.
Younger comics, they would be out party. I didn't start comedy until I was in my 30s, or get on the road. So I'd be with these younger comics who were partying until 2 or 3 in the morning and sleep until 2 in the afternoon. I realized the value of time I had
Mhm.
because I was now self-employed. So I'd go to bed by 11 or 12. I didn't do the late nights party stuff a lot. And so I think we all need to realize the value of time that we have left and what makes you excited, what makes you happy. Maybe it's a hobby that you want to turn into something full time. Maybe you love what you're doing, you don't want to change it all. Great, but figure out why are you spending your valuable time on this planet, and make peace with that. People always say you got to find your passion. I think that's too hard. I'm lucky I found mine. Sounds like you both have found yours. Instead of searching for your passion, stop right now and decide, why do you do the things? Why are you doing what you're doing? Maybe you like the hours, but you hate the driving. Maybe you like the money, but you hate the 70,000 miles a year driving or being in a different city all the time. Find out what it is you like about it and make peace with the stuff that you don't like, and understand why you're doing what you're doing. And so the life doesn't slip by and you go, wow, I should have been doing that. And if you don't like what you're doing, start taking some baby steps to move
Mhm.
in a different direction.
Excellent
Absolutely.
insight. Thank
Yeah.
you so much, Jan. I have thoroughly enjoyed having you on the show and talking with you. You've got some fabulous insight and wisdom.
Thanks, you guys were a blast. I enjoyed talking with you guys. I'm gonna check out that house that you drive there, Kathy.
There you go.
Well, I'll shoot you an email and I'll mail you a book of mine when I get back to Canada.
Oh, super duper! Yeah, that sounds great. That sounds like a plan. Cool.
Oh,
You
you've
guys
been
are fun.
absolutely awesome. Thank you
Yes.
so much. You made my day that started out kind of wobbly 100% better. Thank you
Oh,
so much.
super.
That works.
My work is done today. I can go out.
There you go.
There you
Bike
go.
ride or something. Cool.
Yeah.
Super, you guys. Take care. Thanks
All
again.
right. Bye-bye.
We hope everybody's enjoyed this episode. And if you want to hear more episodes of Women Road Warriors or learn more about our show, be sure to check out womenroadwarriors.com. And please follow us on social media. And don't forget to subscribe to our podcast. Thanks for listening.
You've been listening to Women Road Warriors with Shelley Johnson and Kathy Tuccaro. If you want to be a guest on the show or have a topic or feedback, email us at sjohnson@womenroadwarriors.com.